A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away, in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the Radioactive Ramblings podcast. I am one of your hosts, Aaron, and today we are doing the second part of our Fallout lore series where we are going to be covering the rise of the New California Republic.
And I'm your other co-host, Richard. How you doing today, Aaron?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. The NCR is one of my favorite factions in the Fallout lore, so this is one I've been excited for, not gonna lie. How about you? How you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I just got finished with some of our work for our other upcoming project, and I am
Nice.
now excited to talk about the founding of the NCR. It's
Yeah,
gonna be a fun one.
yeah, coming off the or starting this podcast, I just finished editing our Invincible episodes 5 through 8 episode. So if you want to hear me, Chase, and Richard on the mic talking about the second half of season 2 of Invincible, then go check that out because it should be published. Or I know for a fact that it will be published by the time you are listening to this.
Yeah. All right. And without any further delay, I guess let's get right into it. Aaron, where would you say the start point of the NCR really is?
So this is the start point for actually a few different factions in the Fallout lore. So this is exciting. We have today Vault 15. Now, Richard, do you know anything about Vault 15? What the experiment was? What do you know?
I have no idea. I know that Vault-Tec they built it, and
Yep.
furthermore, there were people in it. That's all I
Yes.
have on Vault 15. I'm sure that it's a completely normal vault. There's no shady experiments going on because Vault-Tec would never, guys. I mean, propaganda.
Yeah, they would never. But in this case, they did. So
But
Vault 15 was one of the few vaults that was constructed before the war without any delays or corners cut. So they got all the nice amenities. They got some pretty good stuff. However, there was an experiment in this vault. The experiment that Vault-Tec put in place was to place people with radically different political ideologies into one vault to see how they would interact with one another.
now, I
Uh,
think that sounds like a fun time. I mean, I think it would be awesome. Totally.
yeah, absolutely. There's no way that this could ever fall apart on people.
No.
Absolutely not. So, very quickly it fell apart. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
eh,
I see you got here in the notes that the living conditions and civility quickly went downhill and deteriorated with a lot of political conflict and really no population control that was in place, so that it was overpopulated pretty quick from what it looks like.
it was overpopulated very, very fast. And so, after about 20 years, after the bombs dropped in 2097, the divide between the dwellers was large enough that they decided to open up the vault. And there were a few distinct groups who arose from this, obviously, with the vault being people who had radically different political ideologies and beliefs. They weren't all going to stick together like the other vaults did when they opened. Um, So there's certainly a few factions in this that are notable, including some inhabitants who stayed in Vault 15 because they were kind of afraid of the outside world.
Right.
And there was also a community founded called Shady Sands who took the Vault's Garden of Eden creation kit with them. Richard, what do you know about Garden of Eden creation kits, or GEX as they're better known?
In terms of like what it actually is and does, I don't like know the exact, in-game definition or term, but based on like the name of it, I'm assuming it was sort of a way to like jumpstart the revitalization of maybe not the planet, but like an area of the wasteland, so that it could, be more like the wonderful world we live in today.
Yeah, you're right on the money. That's exactly what it does. It pretty much jumpstarts civilization, makes the land farmable, all that. So it's a pretty useful little tool. Not many vaults were equipped with them, but like we said earlier, Vault 15 had all the bells and whistles. It had everything that it needed to succeed, except for being a control vault. So the experiment kind of took it down a notch, but other than that, it was very good.
Yeah, it seems like
And
they at least they got it out there when they took it to Shady Sands. Can't talk
they
today.
did. In addition to Shady Sands, there are several raider tribes that formed out of the inhabitants of Vault 15 who split off, and these inhabitants would terrorize the wastelands of California for over a century, like decades and decades. They were around for a while. These
Hmm.
several raider tribes are known as the Khans, the Jackals, and the Vipers. If you've played Fallout 1, 2, or New Vegas, you're going to recognize these guys. Especially the Khans are they have a long history with the New California Republic, and they like to be a thorn in the side of the NCR for sure. So
Yeah,
they uh, have you played New Vegas at all?
just a little bit. My problem is like the first Fallout game I ever played was Fallout 3. I love Fallout 3. If I play New Vegas, it will dethrone Fallout 3, and like I don't want to do that. But I also know that if I actually play it and get into it, I can't not do it because it's New Vegas. I feel like not maybe not universally agreed upon, but like it seems pretty well agreed on that it is considered to be the best Fallout game. So like,
Yeah.
you know, but just one question I had about these three factions of raiders. Would you say like the names of them kind of are are fitting? Like I'm assuming the Khans were like more radical conquerors, and the Vipers were more like swindlers and lying, dirty rat bastards, and maybe the Jackals were cannibals.
So I'm not sure about the cannibalism part. The
Mm-hmm.
Vipers were definitely sort of like sneakier on. Essentially, the Vipers and the Jackals are run of the mill raider groups, but just with a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more aesthetic and a little bit more of an actual community that just happens to be raiders. Like they're a group in their own right. They're a faction in their own right. But
Right.
at the end of the day, they're just still raiders.
Mm-hmm.
The Khans have very much their own culture, their own identity, and they have ambitions above and beyond.
Okay.
Like this is a spoiler for the ending of New Vegas, but there is a way that you can convince the Khans to help either Caesar's Legion or the New California Republic at the Battle of Hoover Dam.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how you go about doing that, how you help the Khans and interact with them, they, in the ending card for Fallout New Vegas, it tells you that they ended up migrating north to Wyoming and settling down and becoming like one of the most powerful factions in the wasteland of this like nomadic empire in the northern part of the United States.
Right.
So they get a pretty cool ending and they become more than raiders if you take certain actions,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's really cool,
they have the
actually.
most, yeah, they have the most flavor to them out of any of these factions. I know
Mm-hmm.
in Fallout 2 they have spies inside of the New California Republic Congress. Like they're pretty powerful for sure.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. I just more just curious, like, if the names had any impact, because I've been reading too much Red Rising, where all of the names are like super implicative of like their personalities and features.
Yeah, they definitely are in this case. The cons more so than the other two, but for sure.
Were there any people, or there were people that stayed inside Vault 15? What really happened to them?
Yeah, so the inhabitants who decided to stay in Vault 15, they were not too well off, I gotta be honest. When the Khans, the Jackals, the Vipers, and the people of Shady Sands all decided to leave the vault,
Hmm.
they kind of took everything with them. They stripped the vault bare, they took the Gek with them, and the vault was sort of left without many ways to make clean water, food, things like that. So they were barely scraping along, these people who stayed, but their community did stick around for generations. And there's some more lore to that, which we may cover in another episode if we decide to talk about the cons
Yeah,
or maybe about Fallout 2. But yeah, they didn't have it off so well, whereas the other groups did a little bit better for themselves.
yeah, of course. And so, Aaron, gotta ask, how is Vault 15 and Shady Sands? I'll get it one of these days. How are
Yes.
they really? How are they really relevant to the founding of the NCR?
So, as Shady Sands and a bunch of other communities in New California rose to prominence, trade relations between these different communities started to prosper. They started to cooperate more with each other, and that's when really the roots of the NCR started to take place. As trade boomed in California and all of these communities became really interconnected with one another, there was this desire for shared culture, cooperation, protection, and the people of California wanted something bigger and better for their lives, you know? I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely want a more orderly and just better in general life. In an already like kind of fucked up life. I mean, might as well do what you can.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, from here, it looks like they formed with a trial council government established to create a constitution. I'm having a moment. Sorry.
You're good.
And that was in 2186.
Yeah, absolutely. And this trial government would exist for around 3 years until they could create a like real constitution. And after those 3 years, the new California Republic proper was officially voted into existence. Now I'm struggling with my words. Apparently, it's contagious.
I guess it is.
As a federation of 5 states. And Richard, what were those 5 states?
So, of course, we had the capital of the NCR, Shady Sands. Then we also had this place in LA called the Boneyard. We had the Hub. We had Dayglow, which is in modern day San Diego, and a town called Maxon. And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was a guy that we talked about last week named Maxon. He was pretty prominent, wasn't he?
There was indeed a man named Maxon that we talked about, the founder of the Brotherhood of Steel. And that's not a coincidence that the state of Maxon is the area surrounding the Lost Hills bunker that the Brotherhood of Steel occupies. However, the Brotherhood is not a part of the NCR,
They
even though
are
the
not.
state, no. In fact, the Brotherhood and the NCR have fought many wars against one another. But,
I did know that actually. That's like one of the few
yes.
things that I got in my brain on this one.
Yeah, they've cooperated in some instances, but most of the time they're butting heads with one another. They don't they don't find each other too appealing.
Yeah, it
Uh,
seems they've got sort of some opposing ideologies and well, just general like political discourse. I don't know,
yeah,
but
no, absolutely they do. I mean, you have the NCR, which is devoted to democracy and the old world ideals of freedom and rights and all of that, and then you have the Brotherhood of Steel, which just wants to hoard technology and keep everything to themselves. So absolutely, you have two starkly different factions with the NCR and the Brotherhood.
yeah,
As for why the state was named Maxon, instead of something else. It's not really clear why they chose to name it after the Brotherhood. Probably because after Fallout 1, which is around the time period that the NCR and the Brotherhood would have been working together a little bit, not so much,
Mhm.
but sort of cooperative in Fallout 1 and 2. Um,
Yeah.
that would have maybe been a reason for them to honor the Brotherhood a little bit. Or it could have just been
Yeah.
that the area was sort of synonymous with the Brotherhood. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a little bit of a different train of thought. I think that it could have just been already kind of a town that then like the NCR came over. Maybe when they were working together, they happened to just sort of absorb Maxon into their nation. Could have just been though, like maybe there were some people who were there when the Brotherhood was formed, when the town was being made, and they decided to name it Maxon, even though they're not necessarily agreeing with his ideology fully. Could be something like
Mm,
that. But I don't know until we get some confirmation, which we're probably not going to get. That is up to debate.
yeah, for sure. And so this is where things get a little bit murky. According to some sources, the NCR's first president was a man named Aradesh, who he was the leader of Shady Sands in the first Fallout game.
Right.
And in other sources, the first president was his daughter Tandy, who is either the first or the second NCR president. But either way, she's the most important president of the NCR. She served for over 50 years. Every time she was elected almost unanimously. She's a big
Wow.
player in the Fallout games, and she's just really universally liked by the people in the New California Republic.
Yeah.
And
Being almost unanimously. Oh my God, what am I doing? Elected is insane. I mean, that's practically unheard of, especially for like a president level position. Like that's insane.
yes, it is worth mentioning that for the NCR, their elections for president are from the Congress. The Congress elects the president and not the people. So
Okay.
it makes a little bit more sense that they were able to unanimously elect Tandy. If it was
Yeah.
everyone in the NCR, there could never be a unanimous
True.
vote.
Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna get to that and ask like how the election unfolded, just because like if it was every citizen in the NCR, that would be insane. But that
yes,
with Congress, it makes a lot more sense that way.
yeah, absolutely. And clearly, the NCR doesn't have term limits because over 50 years as president. Um,
Yeah.
Tandy served, I believe, 5 or 6 5-year terms,
Mhm.
and either retired or died in her last term, and I can't remember which one it is. But we're getting a little bit too far into the timeline, so we can save that for another episode.
Yeah.
Um,
Next up, we got politics of the NCR, and I love talking about politics, so this is gonna be a fun one.
me too.
Um,
You want to kick
yeah.
us off?
Oh, gladly. So at the beginning of the NCR, human rights and equal society flourished with a lot of social programs being implemented as the people of California became, less concerned with basic survival as they started to have access to food and water that wasn't going to turn them into horrible mutants. And
Yes.
once they had living conditions that were kind of okay.
Yeah. Speaking of horrible mutants, let's talk a little bit. We're going to jump around in the outline a little bit here, but
Yeah.
do you know anything about how the NCR treats ghouls and other mutants?
I mean, I don't know, but I am looking at it right now.
Yeah.
I see that they are officially protected under laws, like that's their policy. But people are a little silly to them.
Yes.
It says ghouls and mutants experience a lot of prejudice, and super mutants can be tortured and killed with near impunity despite legal protections, which is so great. It really is.
Yeah. This is especially true on the frontiers, like in Fallout New Vegas, where you've got the Mojave territories. It's not like an official state. It's just more of these frontline wasteland areas and not so much the civilized parts of the NCR. The
Yeah.
military sort of does whatever they want, the people do whatever they want, and a lot of politicians in the NCR would run on these anti-mutant, anti-ghoul campaigns,
Mhm.
despite the fact that a lot of major settlements in the New California Republic were kind of ghoul-centric. Ghouls were sort of less persecuted,
Mhm.
but super mutants were absolutely, they bore the brunt of persecution from the NCR.
Yeah. I feel like that makes a bit more sense just because, like, between a ghoul and a super mutant, I'm going to be more physically threatened by a super mutant. I mean, these guys they're massive, they're jacked, they're green, they're going to
Yeah.
beat the shit out of me. At least that's what I think when I see a super mutant.
Yeah, and especially with you being mostly a Fallout 3 player, that would be
Yeah.
that would be the impression you get, because super mutants in the later Fallout games, and especially like East Coast super mutants,
Mhm.
they have a lot more aggression and have lowered like mental capacity.
Yeah.
But the first gen super mutants that are on the West Coast in like California and stuff, there
Mhm.
are of course the super mutants who are more aggressive, less intelligent, all that. But the first gen super mutants on the West Coast are of greater intelligence and like just as capable as a regular human, which is
Yeah.
why it makes it so kind of disappointing and sad that these super mutants are really persecuted. There's a long history, which if we do an episode about Fallout 1, which I'm guessing at some point we're going to get to a full like Fallout 1 recap, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to do a recap of each of the games. Although before that, I should probably play at least New Vegas. It's on the
Yes.
list. You
New
know.
Vegas, yes. Fallout 1 and 2. Maybe if you really like top down games, you might like them. I can't
I
get
mean,
it
I
to run on
do.
my. Yeah.
I do. I would probably fuck up some Fallout 1 and 2. I
Yeah,
mean,
I can't even get those games to start on my laptop anymore.
oh
Windows 11 does not like to play well with those older games.
shit. Well, I got time to get a new computer and get Windows 10 on it so I don't have to downgrade this one. I
Yep.
mean, shit, might as well.
So there's that long history between mutants and the NCR fighting with one another in Fallout 1, or
Mhm.
what would become the NCR fighting with the mutants.
Yeah,
Uh,
just one
so,
thing I want to uh, go back to and kind of ask about a little bit.
Mhm.
So since the super mutants are a bit more civilized, smarter on the West Coast, I just feel like I've seen it happen with like Death Claws too. There are and I want to say Fallout 2. This is I would call it spoilers, kind of at least. To
Yeah.
Fallout 2, there are talking Death Claws that are. I saw on Instagram someone was doing a bit of a lore dive and said they're about as intelligent as like a 10-year-old. I think. Would you say that's like kind of standard for the monsters and stuff on the West Coast to be a bit more smarter than on the East Coast, or is that really just those two groups?
Yeah, I would say that it's much more standard for like Death Claws and the super mutants to be as intelligent, if not more intelligent, than humans on the West Coast. At least, like I said, those first gens. After that,
Yeah,
things got corrupted and it declined very quickly.
of
But
course.
yeah, West Coast, because that's where all of these creatures were originally created, in
Mm-hmm.
at least in most of Fallout canon. Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 have sort of changed things a little bit, but we'll get into that in another
Yeah,
episode.
that'll be down the line for
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, the East Coast mutants are definitely not as intelligent. They've got, and the Death Claws as well. They're more like regular monsters and sort of just target practice for the player character. They're not so much
Yeah,
real characters as they are just enemies to be dealt with.
I wouldn't call Deathclaws enemies. I would call Deathclaws turned, I guess at least Fallout 3 when I was first playing it 10 years ago when I was 9. They turned that game from like a survival game, action, little bit of horror into a full on like I am terrified. Do not talk to me. No one come near me while I'm playing through any segment with a Deathclaw because those things were too much back in the day.
Yeah, well, let me just tell you, when you boot up New Vegas for the first time,
I know about
uh,
the
there,
canyon.
yeah, Quarry Junction. You should head right there. It's a shortcut to Vegas.
Yeah,
You
that's
should
what
head
I
right there.
heard. Oh my
Yeah,
god, that's so crazy. I heard that there's actually just a lot of really nice people that live there too, and
yeah,
yeah, it's gonna be a great
absolutely.
time.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the Congress of the NCR. The Congress of the NCR, which would eventually become known as the NCR Senate, had a lot of elected officials, which all held the same like responsibilities. They were all effectively the same role, but they had different titles based on where they came from. Like
Mhm.
some areas had senators, some had counselors, some had congressmen, and there was even one governor, which I believe the governor came from the hub,
Mhm.
just because the hub had a lot of these sort of exclusions and special privileges. It was a huge trading area, and there's a lot of history with the hub that we don't really have time to get into today. There were wars fought in the hub between different families vying for control, all that.
Mhm.
So they've got a lot of unique history.
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna cover that later.
Yeah, we can get into the like specific settlements later on because those are really interesting. I think that
Yeah,
we can cover a couple in the same episode, like doing the
we could do
hub and
like
Dayglow.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say we could do like here are the major NCR settlements: the Brotherhood, those Enclave
Yeah.
bastards. You know,
Honestly, the hub might be an episode in its own right. There's a lot of lore behind there that's really cool, and people
yeah,
might want to hear a little bit more about that.
yeah. That'd be
Um,
fun.
and one of the interesting things about the NCR is as it expanded both militarily and by like signing in new members and new territories,
Hmm.
um, we don't know of any additional states that were created. We can assume that maybe there are some more that have popped up, but all we know is those initial states and that there are territories that have been incorporated and that have representatives to Congress. So even
Yeah.
places that don't have full statehood, they still send representatives to Congress. So
So like
better,
Oregon and Baja
yeah,
California. Okay.
yeah, exactly. And Northern California,
Oh,
there's
true.
a community called Redding, which is sort of this area where there's a lot of Brahmin Baron. And just to do a quick recap, Brahmin are the two-headed cows. And so there's all these really powerful cattle ranchers in Northern California, and they make up a really powerful political faction in the NCR.
Hmm. That's awesome. Reading actually was the town of that concert I went to the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, funny shout
That's
out.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Then under the leadership of the corrupt and warmongering politicians, which would never happen in real life. Uh, for instance, there's President Aaron Kimball. The NCR aimed to take over the city of New Vegas and its surrounding communities to become the presumed sixth state of the NCR. And we don't like Aaron Kimball, do we at all, Aaron?
No, and we're gonna do another quick New Vegas spoiler warning to talk about him real quick. Um, you can assassinate him in Fallout New Vegas,
That is
or
good to
you
know
can,
because I will be doing it.
or you can prevent his assassination if you decide to side with any of the factions that can be considered good, I guess. Uh,
Why are there balloons? What did you
I
do?
I don't know why.
That was
Okay,
interesting.
for anyone listening at home, I made an air quote gesture, and the recording software that that we use decided to put balloons behind me. So
That was cool. Yeah, it isn't doing it when I try it, but whatever.
yeah,
I
it's
guess
not
it
doing
just
it again.
it don't like me like that. That's all right.
No, I guess not. But yeah, you can either prevent his assassination, do it yourself, or do nothing and just let it happen, or attempt, fail, and he can escape. So,
Oh, that's actually
um,
that is cool. I like when games let you
yeah,
fail instead of just being like game over. I mean, I for Fallout it goes very against it, but like I feel like that's a thing in too many games where it's like, oh, you failed to do this, so fuck you, it's over. Now you got to restart at a
yeah,
checkpoint.
exactly. And so back to the like early days of the NCR. Under President Tandy, discrimination based on race, sexuality, gender, religion, political affiliation, it was all outlawed, which is great. They formed a very egalitarian society, a very forward thinking and progressive society in the NCR, which fantastic. How long that will last for, well, we don't want to give any spoilers, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Then afterwards, they had their department called the OSI, or the Office of Science and Industry. They were able to get the Hoover Dam up and running to restore power to California and the Mojave Desert, and that's actually really awesome because that's one of the core pieces of a modern civilization. So they're moving up.
Yeah, they had a pretty extensive power grid. And do you know anything about some of the like amenities and stuff that they had in New California?
I don't like 100%. I'm assuming though they did have mostly clean water. I know this is a spoiler for Fallout the show, but I know that they had a successful like farm area running. They had, it looked like trams or trolleys going through Shady Sands at least, and I'm assuming that was a bit more widespread. But
Mhm.
what else could you tell me? Because obviously I that's really all I got.
Yeah, they had a lot of public welfare programs. They had they had professional baseball teams, and you could listen to baseball games on the radio.
Oh, that's actually really cool. I never knew that any of like the civilizations in the post-apocalyptic like wasteland really had that level of society and civilization. That's awesome.
Yeah, they also were one of the few nations or groups in the wasteland who had like a foreign relations department. They had ambassadors and stuff that would go out to other communities and try and i- make political ties a little bit better. One of the notable ones was their embassy on the New Vegas Strip. Um, and yeah, they had some pretty advanced things that we would associate with our modern nation states. So it's very cool to think about that. It's unfortunate that we don't get to see that in any of the games. We don't get to see really in full force the NCR. We see some pieces here and there, but we don't get a look at the new California Republic in its glory days in the core of the NCR.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that is really cool that like I don't know, it's just a lot, and it's going to be interesting to see what the NCR does. Again, spoilers for the Fallout show, like what might happen with cold fusion. I mean, infinite
Yeah.
power is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Despite all these advancements in the NCR, corruption, monopolies, overextension, and a growing lack of faith from a lot of NCR citizens placed the New California Republic in a pretty precarious situation near the end of the 2070s. Um,
2070s. Really?
oh, I'm sorry, the 2270s. That's my bad.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, what? How?
No, 22
All right.
in the
Yeah.
in the 2070s the bombs hadn't even dropped yet. So that's my bad. That's my bad.
Yeah.
In the 2270s. But we're going to let that go for another episode because the NCR story does not end here and it doesn't end with the games. They're a fairly prominent part of the story in the Fallout show on Amazon Prime, which spoiler, we have full coverage of. Go check it out.
We
Uh
do. Well, I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't
yeah,
invited.
no.
Unbelievable. Unreal. But that's all right. It'll just be me and Chase for our next project. All right.
Yeah, you can leave me out. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. As long as you understand, that's great.
Yeah. Uh, so we don't have any listener feedback for this episode, but Richard, do you have any thoughts, questions, concerns about anything that we've talked about today?
I really don't on this one. Like I feel like I'm understanding this one a bit more easily, and I have less questions than I did with the Brotherhood, at least, which
Mhm.
is, I mean, that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, the NCR is a little bit more straightforward, especially in the way that it's organized. Like, I'm not going to go through and tell them how, or tell you all how their military works and everything like we did for the Brotherhood, because everything that they have is essentially based on the US government that we have
Okay,
today.
yeah.
Uh, so, well, a few details here and there are tweaked, like, 5-year term limits, or 5-year terms for president instead of
And no
4.
term limits, yeah.
Yeah, no term limits. Uh, I don't think that we need to get into the nitty gritty details of how everything works and why, because it's essentially the same.
Yeah. I do
And
like that they sorry.
no, go ahead.
All right. I do like that they seem to be like the ones actually propagating, what we would consider modern society today, whereas the Brotherhood and I'd say the Enclave, I mean most other factions that have pre-war ties don't seem to be doing that really, and I think that's just an interesting way to present them, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that I think is most interesting about the NCR is sort of the fact that they're really one of the few examples we have of an actual country as we think of them today forming in the aftermath. Like,
Hmm.
if you go to the East Coast in Fallout 4 or Fallout 3, the Brotherhood, the Enclave, the Railroad, the Minutemen, the Institute, none of those are like nations who are vying for power in the way that the NCR is trying to do things.
Yeah.
Um, they're just sort of these loose groups or confederations or like militias, and the NCR has actual government and programs and things like that, which I think is really cool. I would like to see a little bit more of that going forward in the Fallout universe, because it's been 200 years since the apocalypse. I think that we're ready to see actual countries forming again in the aftermath of the apocalypse. I think it's been long enough.
Yeah, and I think it'd definitely be interesting, like, say all of the other, like, all the factions, not even come together, I guess, but, like, each faction comes together into its own full-on country, and then if we got, um, third and final warning about Fallout show spoilers, if we got Vault Tech, doing, like, they become sort of restored as a nation, and, like, it would be interesting to see what would happen, considering, like, they they started everything.
Yeah.
It would be cool to see like what would happen if that got out. Maybe there'd be a massive war. Who knows? Then again, I
Yeah.
guess the war wouldn't go well for anyone outside of Vault-Tec.
Yeah, apparently Vault-Tec has, again, spoiler warning, nukes. So,
Yeah, just a few.
uh, just a few at least. So I don't think I have anything more to add to this story until the next time we talk about the NCR. We're going to keep going with these major factions that are relevant to the Fallout television series. Maybe someday we're going to do the East Coast stuff like the Minutemen, the Institute. But I think that for right now, we want to just cover stuff on the West Coast that will matter for the show, and
Yeah,
then
and then we
sort of
can
give the
branch
history
out
of
from
that.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should probably cover. I mean, I'm sure we've got some time, but we should probably cover the tunnelers before season 2, just in case, because from what I know,
Yes.
those seem like they're going to be they could be an important figure.
Yeah. When we cover New Vegas, and I think New Vegas and the DLCs will probably have to be multiple episodes.
Yeah, we
But
could do
when
like
we
a
do
mini
that,
series for it.
yeah, absolutely. We'll have like New Vegas month or something like that. That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
cool.
yeah. So once that comes around, we'll have some info that'll be like very relevant to the TV show if they go the direction that we think that they're going to go. So
Yeah.
if you have any questions, comments, concerns, even if it's not about something that we've covered so far, you just want to know the answer or just chat about the show, send us some feedback. Send us an email. Richard, do you want to tell people how they can get in touch with us?
Oh yeah, I got this one. First off, we'd like to just say thank you so much for listening to this new episode, our second installment of the Fallout lore series. We do love having you guys be a part of our conversation. There are, as Aaron said, some ways you can get in touch with us, send us some feedback. First one would be emailing radioactive@thelorehounds.com. We also, alternatively, have a channel set up for Radioactive Ramblings within the Lorehounds Discord server. You could send us a message, chat about the show. For me personally, if you guys have any questions, you could ping me at least. Just because I won't notice it immediately if it's not a ping, but like if I get a ping saying, "Hey, what's this guy in the NCR? Like, what's his deal?" I'll do my best, or I'll talk to Aaron. Something like that would work. There's one other one, or two other ones actually. We have a contact form, or you could leave a voicemail, whichever one you're more comfortable with, at thelorehounds.com. We also have a Twitter. It's Radioactive141, and if you feel like it, we'd appreciate a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm sure that there are other listening outlets. Those are really just the two big ones that I know of, and it would help us out. It would help other listeners or potential listeners find us. Yeah.
And all that information, as well as the info I'm about to share with you guys, can be found in our show notes. So just hop on over to the show notes. You'll find links to the Discord and our Twitter spelled out, everything like that. So without further ado, like Richard said, thank you guys so much for listening today. We really appreciate it. All the support is just amazing. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about our affiliate programming. We are proud affiliates of the Barovian Podcasting Network, which is run and operated by the Lorehounds, our parent podcast. Let's talk a little bit about our sibling podcasts. We've got Rings and Rituals, which is run by Marilyn Arpukila and Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University. They are analyzing the Rings of Power Season 1 through the lens of ritual. It's a great podcast, really insightful. Go check them out. We also have Woolshift Dust and the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, which are both run by Alicia, who is newly the third Lorehound. So congratulations to Alicia, John, and David on that. And as for Woolshift Dust and the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, they've got a lot on those feeds coming up in the future. Alicia's working like crazy to get those episodes out, and they are fantastic. So go check those all out. Next up, Properly Howard Movie Review. Two old friends review movies. Anthony is an academic, Steve is a stand-up comic, and they rate movies on a scale of better or worse than a Ron Howard film. They've got a new season theme, which is Felonies and Fugazis. These two are hilarious. Go check them out. And finally, our parent podcast, The Lorehounds. They just finished up their Shogun season coverage. They have a full wrap-up and everything there. And some other projects that they've got coming up. They've got a MCU X-Men 97 episode coming out. They're going to be doing a one-shot for Dick Turpin. And they are currently doing episode by episode, two episodes at a time, recap of the House of the Dragon series in anticipation of the new show coming up. And without further ado, thank you all again so much for listening. We appreciate your support, and we hope to see you in the next episode of Radioactive Ramblings.
A new Star Wars journey begins in the place all good journeys begin. At, well, the beginning. This Star Wars Day, I'm excited to introduce the new Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where we will piece together the complete story of that galaxy far, far away, in timeline order, from the dawn of the Jedi through the great unknown following the sequel trilogy. This is a podcast for both Star Wars superfans and complete newbies. Listen to the short intro episode now to hear how it works, and what to expect over the coming weeks as we set the stage for the new television series The Acolyte, which we will be covering with weekly breakdowns. Subscribe to the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast wherever you listen to take part in one of the most epic and expansive stories ever told, following all the twists and turns from start to finish. May the 4th be with you all month and beyond.